Margaret's heart hammered against her ribs as the footsteps grew closer from both directions. She pulled Emma behind her, a protective instinct she didn't even know she had taken over. 13 years of missing this child, and now that Emma was here, impossibly here, Margaret would die before letting anyone hurt her. "Stay behind me," Margaret whispered. "No, Mom, you don't understand," Emma breathed. "These people are dangerous. They have weapons. They won't care that you're rich or famous." "I don't care what they have," Margaret said, her voice steady despite her fear. "You're my daughter." Those words hung in the air between them. My daughter. Margaret said it with such certainty, such fierce conviction, that Emma's eyes filled with fresh tears. "You believe me?" Emma whispered, her voice cracking with hope and disbelief. Margaret turned to look at her. Really look at her. Now that she was seeing Emma through different eyes, Margaret couldn't believe she hadn't noticed it before. The shape of Emma's face was exactly like Margaret's mother. The way she bit her lip when she was nervous was exactly like Margaret did. The blue eyes were Robert's, yes, but the small dimple on her left cheek when she tried to smile, that was pure Harrison family genetics. "I don't understand how any of this is possible," Margaret said softly. "But yes, I believe you." Emma let out a sob. Part relief, part joy, part grief, for all the years they'd lost. The footsteps were getting closer. Margaret could hear men's voices now, calling out to each other. "She went in here. Check every corner." The boss said not to let her escape this time. Margaret's mind raced. They needed a way out. Her eyes scanned the alley desperately. Dumpsters, fire escapes, locked doors, nothing helpful. Then she saw it. A small gap between two buildings, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. It was partially hidden behind stacked cardboard boxes. "There," Margaret pointed. "Can you fit through that?" Emma looked and nodded. "Yes, but what about you?" "I'll fit," Margaret said, though she wasn't sure. She was wearing a designer dress and heels. Not exactly the outfit for squeezing through narrow spaces. "Go. Now." They rushed to the gap. Emma moved the cardboard boxes aside as quietly as she could. The footsteps were almost at the alley entrance. Emma slipped through the gap easily, her thin frame making it simple. Margaret tried to follow, but her dress caught on something. She pulled hard, hearing the expensive fabric tear. But she didn't care. She squeezed through, feeling the rough brick scrape against her arms. They emerged in a different alley, this one opening onto a side street. Emma grabbed Margaret's hand, and they ran. Margaret's lungs burned. Her feet screamed in protest inside her heels. She kicked them off without stopping, running barefoot on the cold concrete. Behind them, she could hear shouts as the men discovered they'd escaped. Emma pulled her around a corner, then another. They darted between parked cars, cut through a small playground, and finally ducked into a 24-hour laundromat. The bright fluorescent lights and the warm smell of detergent felt surreal after the terror of the chase. An elderly woman folding clothes looked up at them curiously but didn't say anything. Margaret and Emma collapsed onto a plastic bench, gasping for breath. Margaret's bare feet were dirty and cut. Her expensive dress was torn and ruined. Her perfectly styled hair was a mess. She probably looked like a crazy person. She didn't care. She looked at Emma, who was also breathing hard, her thin shoulders rising and falling rapidly. And Margaret felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been frozen for 13 years, began to thaw. "Are you okay?" Margaret asked gently, reaching out to touch Emma's bruised cheek. "Does this hurt?" Emma flinched slightly at the touch, not from pain but from surprise, like she wasn't used to gentle touches. "I'm okay," Emma said. "I've had worse." Those words, "I've had worse," broke Margaret's heart into a million pieces. "How long have you been on the streets?" Margaret asked. Emma looked down at her hands. "Since I came through. About 3 months." 3 months, Margaret repeated, feeling sick. "You've been homeless for 3 months? Living in the park? While I was sleeping in my mansion just a few miles away?" "You didn't know I existed," Emma said quickly. "It's not your fault." "Yes, it is," Margaret said, tears streaming down her face now. "If what you're saying is true, if you really are my daughter, then you should have been home with us. You should have had a warm bed and clean clothes and 3 meals a day. You should have had everything Thomas has, everything I could give you." Emma's own tears started falling again. "But I was never supposed to have those things. I was supposed to die, remember? This borrowed time I have now, it's more than I was ever meant to get." "Don't say that," Margaret said fiercely. "Don't you dare say you were supposed to die. You're here now. You're alive. And that means you deserve to live. Really live. Not just survive on the streets like an animal." "But the collectors—" "I don't care about the collectors," Margaret interrupted. "I don't care about their rules or their reasons. You're 13 years old, Emma. You're a child, my child, and I will protect you with everything I have." Emma stared at her mother, and in that moment, she looked so young and so vulnerable. All the walls she'd built up, all the toughness she'd developed from living on the streets, crumbled away. She was just a scared little girl who desperately wanted her mother. "I'm dying," Emma whispered. "Even if the collectors don't find me, I only have about 3 months. The doctor said—" "What doctor?" Margaret cut in. "You've seen a doctor?" Emma nodded. "At the free clinic on 42nd Street. They did some tests. They said I have something wrong with my heart, something that can't be fixed. It's part of being wish-born, I think. We're not meant to exist for long. Our bodies break down." Margaret felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. The doctor said, I have maybe 3 months, maybe less." "No," Margaret said, shaking her head. "No, absolutely not. I just found you. I am not losing you again. Not in 3 months. Not in 3 years. Not ever." "Mom, you can't stop it." "Watch me," Margaret said with steel in her voice. "I have the best doctors in New York on speed dial. We'll get second opinions, third opinions, 100 opinions if we need to. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I will use every penny of it to save you." "What if I can't be saved?" Emma asked, her voice small. Margaret took Emma's thin, dirty hands in her own. "Then we'll make every single day count. We'll cram a lifetime of memories into whatever time we have. You'll know what it feels like to have a real family, to have a mother who loves you, a brother who adores you, a home that's yours." "Thomas," Emma said suddenly. "Mrs. Chen said he was having a panic attack. We need to get to him." Margaret nodded, pulling out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial. She called Mrs. Chen. "Mrs. Harrison." Mrs. Chen answered immediately. "Where are you?" "Thomas is—" "I'm on my way," Margaret said. "Tell him I'm bringing someone. Tell him, Emma, is coming home." There was silence on the other end. "Emma? Who is Emma?" "His sister," Margaret said, and saying it out loud made it real. "Tell Thomas his sister is coming home." Margaret hung up before Mrs. Chen could ask more questions. She stood up and held out her hand to Emma. "Come on," she said. "Let's go home." Emma looked at Margaret's hand for a long moment. This was it, the moment of decision. She could go with Margaret, accept this impossible gift of family, and risk putting them all in danger from the collectors. Or she could run, disappear, back into the streets, and keep them safe. But when she looked up at Margaret's face, at the fierce love and determination in her mother's eyes, Emma knew she couldn't run anymore. She was so tired of being alone, so tired of being cold and hungry and scared. She wanted to be someone's daughter. She wanted to be Thomas's sister. She wanted to be part of a family, even if it was only for a little while. Emma took Margaret's hand. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's go home." They stepped out of the laundromat together. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The street was busy with evening traffic and people heading home from work. Margaret hailed a taxi, and they climbed in. Emma had never been in a taxi before. She'd always walked everywhere or taken the subway when she had spare change. As they drove through the city streets toward the Upper East Side, Emma pressed her face against the window, watching the world go by. Margaret watched Emma, her heart full of so many emotions she couldn't even name them all. Joy, fear, love, grief, hope, determination. "Emma," Margaret said softly. Emma turned to look at her. "I need you to tell me everything," Margaret said. "About where you came from, about these collectors, about what it means to be Wishborn. I need to understand what we're up against if I'm going to protect you." Emma nodded slowly. "It's a long story." "We have time," Margaret said. Then she paused. "Well, maybe not as much time as I'd like, but we have now, so start from the beginning." Emma took a deep breath. "Okay, so 13 years ago, when you were pregnant." She told Margaret everything about how she'd been the weaker twin, the one whose heart wasn't developing properly, about how the doctors had told Robert that both babies would die unless one was sacrificed to give the other enough resources to survive, about how Robert had spent 3 agonizing hours sitting in that hospital waiting room, trying to decide which child to save. "He chose Thomas," Emma said, and there was no bitterness in her voice. "And he was right to choose Thomas. Thomas was stronger. Thomas had a better chance. I understand why Dad made that choice." "But you're here," Margaret said. "So something changed." "When Dad died," Emma continued, "his last thoughts were about family, about you and Thomas, about the daughter he had to sacrifice to save his son. He wished, more than anything, that he could give you back the child you lost. That wish was so powerful, so pure, that it created a tear, I guess you could call it, a tear in the fabric of reality. And you came through that tear," Margaret finished. "Yes, but it's not simple. I'm not fully real, not in the way you and Thomas are real. I exist in the space between what was and what could have been. And because of that, my body is unstable. It's breaking down. The heart that never fully formed in the womb is finally giving out." "What about the collectors?" Margaret asked. "Why are they after you?" Emma's face darkened. "They're people who hunt Wishborn, people who believe that those of us who weren't supposed to exist are dangerous, that we're anomalies that could destroy reality itself if we're allowed to live. They track us down and eliminate us." "That's insane," Margaret said. "Maybe," Emma agreed. "But they're very real and very dangerous, and they've been getting closer. That's why I was trying to stay away from you and Thomas. I didn't want to put you in danger." "Too late for that," Margaret said. "We're family now. That means we face danger together." The taxi pulled up in front of Margaret's mansion. Emma's eyes went wide as she stared up at the enormous building. "You live here?" Emma breathed. "We live here," Margaret corrected. "This is your home now, too." They got out of the taxi. Margaret paid the driver and then turned to face her house. She could see lights on in the windows. She could imagine Mrs. Chen inside, trying to calm Thomas down, probably completely confused by Margaret's cryptic phone call. Margaret took Emma's hand again. "Ready?" Emma looked scared. "What if Thomas doesn't like me? What if he thinks I'm lying?" "He won't," Margaret said with certainty. "You said twins share a connection. He's been feeling your absence his whole life. When he meets you, he'll know. He'll know you're real." They walked up the steps together. Margaret unlocked the front door and pushed it open. The marble entryway was exactly as she'd left it that morning. The chandelier sparkled overhead. The grand staircase curved up to the second floor. Everything was pristine and perfect and expensive. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, looking overwhelmed. "Mrs. Harrison," Mrs. Chen's voice came from upstairs. "Thank God you're home. Thomas is." Mrs. Chen appeared at the top of the stairs and stopped dead when she saw Emma. Her eyes went wide, taking in Emma's dirty, torn clothes and bruised face. "Who is this?" Mrs. Chen asked, concern in her voice. Before Margaret could answer, another voice called out. A small, excited voice that made both Margaret and Emma freeze. "Emma?" Thomas appeared behind Mrs. Chen at the top of the stairs. He couldn't see, but somehow he knew. Somehow he could sense her presence. "Emma!" Thomas cried out. "You're here! You're really here!" He started running down the stairs, his hands trailing along the banister to guide him. Mrs. Chen tried to stop him, but Thomas was too fast. Emma dropped to her knees as Thomas reached the bottom of the stairs. He ran straight to her, like he could see exactly where she was, and then he threw his small arms around her neck and hugged her with all his might. "I knew you were real," Thomas sobbed into Emma's shoulder. "I knew you were real. Everyone said I was imagining you, but I knew. I could feel you. I've always felt you." Emma wrapped her arms around her little brother, tears streaming down her face. "I'm real," she whispered. "I'm here. I'm so sorry it took me so long to find you." Margaret watched them, her hand pressed to her mouth, tears flowing freely. This was what she had lost 13 years ago. This bond between siblings. This pure, uncomplicated love. Mrs. Chen slowly came down the stairs, looking completely bewildered. "Mrs. Harrison, I don't understand. Who is this girl?" "Why does Thomas think?" "Her name is Emma," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. "She's my daughter, Thomas's twin sister." Mrs. Chen's mouth fell open. But that's impossible. You only have one child." "I thought I did too," Margaret said. "But I was wrong. Emma is here now. And she's staying." Thomas pulled back from Emma, his small hands reaching up to touch her face. His fingers traced her features gently, her nose, her cheeks, her hair. "You sound like sunshine," Thomas said, repeating what he'd said the first day he heard her sing. "And you feel like home." Emma let out a laugh that was half sob. "You feel like home too, little brother." I'm not that little, Thomas protested. I'm 7. I'm 13, Emma said, smiling through her tears. So you're definitely little compared to me. Thomas grinned. It was the biggest, brightest smile Margaret had seen on his face since before Robert died. You're going to live with us, right? Thomas asked urgently. You're not going to disappear again? Emma looked up at Margaret, uncertainty in her eyes. Margaret nodded firmly. Yes, Emma told Thomas. I'm going to live here with you. Thomas whooped with joy and hugged her again. Mrs. Chen was still standing on the stairs, looking like she'd stepped into an alternate reality. Margaret couldn't blame her. 5 hours ago, Margaret would have thought this whole situation was impossible too. Mrs. Chen, Margaret said, I know this is confusing and unexpected. I'll explain everything later. But right now, Emma needs a hot bath, clean clothes, and a good meal. Can you help me with that? Mrs. Chen, professional as always, snapped out of her shock and nodded. Of course, Mrs. Harrison. I'll prepare one of the guest rooms. No, Margaret said. Prepare the room next to Thomas's, the one with the window seat and the view of the garden. That was the room Margaret had originally decorated as a nursery when she was pregnant with twins. After she lost one baby, she'd closed it up, unable to bear looking at the empty crib. Later, she'd converted it into a generic guest room, but she'd never been able to bring herself to use it. Now she understood why. She'd been saving it, waiting for this impossible moment. Come on, Margaret said to Emma, helping her to her feet. Let's get you cleaned up. Thomas insisted on coming too, holding Emma's hand the entire way up the stairs. They walked down the hallway to the room, and Margaret opened the door. The room was beautiful. Large windows let in the last of the evening light. The walls were painted a soft cream color. There was a queen-sized bed with fluffy pillows, a desk, a bookshelf, and that window seat with cushions that looked out over the garden. Emma stood in the doorway, staring like she'd walked into a fairy tale. This is mine? She whispered. This is yours, Margaret confirmed. Forever. Emma walked slowly into the room, touching everything like she couldn't quite believe it was real. The soft bed, the clean curtains, the books on the shelf. I've never had my own room before, Emma said quietly. Those words hit Margaret like a physical blow. Her daughter had never had her own room. She'd been sleeping on the streets, in the cold, in the danger, while Margaret slept in a mansion with 20 rooms. Well, you have one now, Margaret said, fighting to keep her voice steady. And we're going to fill it with everything you need. Clothes, books, whatever you want. I don't need much, Emma said. This is already more than I ever dreamed of. Mrs. Chen appeared with an armful of fluffy towels. The bath is ready. I've put out some clothes that might fit her. They're probably too big, but they'll do for tonight. Tomorrow we can go shopping. Emma looked panicked. I can't go shopping. The collectors will find me if I go out in public. Then we'll have someone bring clothes here, Margaret said immediately. Whatever you need to feel safe. Mrs. Chen gave Margaret a strange look, but didn't ask questions. I'll go prepare dinner. Something hearty, I think. She looked at Emma with concern. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in weeks. After Mrs. Chen left, Margaret helped Emma into the bathroom. It was a beautiful bathroom with marble counters and a large bathtub that was already filled with hot, steaming water. Emma stared at the bathtub like she'd never seen one before. When's the last time you had a hot bath? Margaret asked gently. Emma thought about it. Before I came through. So, 3 months. Margaret's heart broke a little more. Take your time. Use whatever soaps and shampoos you want. There are clean towels on the rack. I'll leave the clothes Mrs. Chen brought on the counter. When you're done, come downstairs and we'll have dinner together, as a family." Emma turned to Margaret, her eyes shining. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for bringing me home." Margaret pulled Emma into a hug. It was the first real hug they'd ever shared, and Margaret never wanted to let go. She could feel how thin Emma was, how fragile, like a bird with hollow bones. "You're my daughter," Margaret said fiercely. "I will always believe you. I will always bring you home." They held each other for a long moment. Then Margaret forced herself to let go and left Emma to her bath. Out in the hallway, Margaret leaned against the wall and finally let herself break down. She covered her mouth with her hand to muffle her sobs. All the emotion of the past few hours, the fear, the shock, the joy, the grief, came pouring out. She had a daughter, an impossible, dying, hunted daughter. A daughter she'd lost before she even knew her. A daughter who had suffered alone on the streets, while Margaret lived in luxury just miles away. And now she had 3 months. 3 months to be Emma's mother. 3 months to give her everything she'd missed. 3 months to somehow find a way to save her. It wasn't enough time. It would never be enough time. But it was what they had, and Margaret was going to make every single second count. A small hand tugged on Margaret's dress. She looked down to see Thomas standing there, having felt his way down the hall. "Mommy, are you crying?" Thomas asked. Margaret wiped her eyes. "Yes, baby, but they're happy tears. I promise." "Emma is really going to stay?" Thomas asked. "Forever?" Margaret's heart clenched. How could she tell her 7-year-old son that his sister, who he'd just met, was dying? She couldn't. Not yet. Let him have this joy for a little while longer. "Yes," Margaret said, hoping it wasn't a lie. "She's really going to stay." Thomas smiled and hugged Margaret's legs. "This is the best day ever. I have a sister, a real sister. And she's nice, and she sings pretty, and she smells like flowers, even though she was dirty." Margaret smiled through her tears. "She does smell like flowers, doesn't she?" Actually, Emma had smelled like the streets, like dirt and sweat and desperation. But to Thomas, who loved her instinctively and completely, she smelled like flowers. That's what love did. It transformed things. It saw beauty where others saw only ugliness. Margaret thought about Robert, about the impossible choice he'd had to make 13 years ago. Save one child or lose both. He'd chosen Thomas, and that choice had haunted him for the rest of his life. But his final wish, his desperate hope to give back what he'd taken, had created this miracle, this impossible second chance. "Thank you, Robert," Margaret whispered to the air, to her dead husband's spirit, to whatever force in the universe had made this possible. "Thank you for bringing her back to us." Downstairs, the doorbell rang. Margaret froze. It was almost 8 o'clock at night. Who would be visiting at this hour? Mrs. Chen's voice called up the stairs. "Mrs. Harrison, there are some men here. They say they need to speak with you urgently. They say it's about a girl you were seen with today." Margaret's blood turned to ice. The collectors had found them. Margaret's hands were shaking as she crept down the grand staircase, each step feeling like it might be her last. Through the frosted glass of the front door, she could see the dark shapes of 3 men standing on her porch. They weren't dressed like normal visitors. They wore long black coats, despite the warm evening. Their faces were hidden in shadows. Mrs. Chen stood by the door, looking nervous. "Mrs. Harrison, these men won't tell me what they want. They just keep asking about a girl." Margaret's mind raced. Emma was upstairs in the bath, vulnerable, unaware. If these collectors got to her, tell them I'll be right there, Margaret said, her voice surprisingly steady. And Mrs. Chen? Whatever happens, don't let anyone go upstairs. Do you understand? No matter what they say. Mrs. Chen's eyes widened, but she nodded. She'd worked for the Harrison family for 5 years. She knew when to ask questions and when to simply obey. Margaret walked to the door and opened it just a crack. She didn't invite them in. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she asked, keeping her voice cold and formal. This was her house, her territory. She was Margaret Harrison, widow of Robert Harrison, one of the most powerful businessmen in New York. These men didn't scare her. Except they did. They terrified her. But she couldn't let them see that. The man in front stepped into the light from her porch lamp. He was tall and thin, with a face that looked like it had never smiled once in its entire life. His eyes were gray and flat, like stones at the bottom of a cold river. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, his voice smooth and dangerous. "My name is Mr. Crane. These are my associates, Mr. Wire and Mr. Ash. We're looking for a girl, about 13 years old, brown hair, blue eyes, very thin. We have witnesses who say you were seen with her earlier today." "I see many people every day," Margaret said coolly. "I'm afraid you'll have to be more specific." Mr. Crane's eyes narrowed. "This girl is dangerous, Mrs. Harrison. She's not what she appears to be. She's sick in the mind. She tells lies. Elaborate lies that make people believe impossible things. We're trying to help her. Get her the treatment she needs." "If you're trying to help her, why were your men chasing her through the park?" Margaret asked. "Why did they beat her? That doesn't seem very helpful to me." Mr. Crane's expression didn't change, but Margaret saw a flicker of something in his eyes, surprised that she knew so much. "I apologize if my men were too aggressive," Mr. Crane said, "but you have to understand, this girl is delusional. She's been living on the streets, stealing from good people, filling their heads with wild stories. She's probably told you something crazy by now. That she's your long-lost daughter, perhaps? Or some other fantasy?" Margaret's heart pounded, but she kept her face blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Mrs. Harrison," Mr. Crane said, stepping closer. "I know she's in your house. I can feel it. And I'm telling you right now, if you harbor her, you're putting yourself and your son in grave danger. This girl is an anomaly, a mistake. She shouldn't exist. And the longer she stays in this world, the more damage she causes to the fabric of reality itself." "That's insane," Margaret said. "Is it?" Mr. Crane asked. "Or is it insane to believe that a dead child could somehow come back to life? That a wish could bend the laws of nature? Mrs. Harrison, I know about your twins. I know what happened 13 years ago. I know that one baby died so the other could live. And I know that the one who died should have stayed dead." Margaret's blood turned to ice. How did he know about that? The twin pregnancy had been private. Only her closest family and the medical staff knew about it. How did these collectors have that information? "Get off my property," Margaret said quietly. "Not until you hand over the girl," Mr. Crane replied. "I said get off my property," Margaret repeated, louder this time. "Or I'm calling the police." Mr. Crane laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. "The police can't help you. They can't even see what's happening. But you can, can't you? You've looked into her eyes. You've heard her stories. And some part of you wants to believe it's true, that your lost daughter has miraculously returned. Leave. Now." Margaret's hand moved to her phone. Wico. Margaret's hand moved to her phone. She's going to die anyway, Mr. Crane said casually. In a few weeks, maybe a month, her heart will give out. That's what happens to Wishborn. They're not meant to survive. So why fight for her? Why not just hand her over and let us end it quickly, painlessly? It's the merciful thing to do. If I see you on my property again, Margaret said, her voice shaking with fury, I will have you arrested. I will use every lawyer I have to destroy you. I will make your life a living hell. Do you understand me? For a long moment, Mr. Crane just stared at her. Then he smiled. It was the scariest smile Margaret had ever seen. We'll be watching, he said softly. Every time you leave the house, every time you go to the store, every time you take your blind son to the park, we'll be there, waiting. And eventually, you'll slip up, you'll make a mistake, and when you do, we'll be ready. He turned and walked away, his two associates following silently behind him. They got into a black car parked across the street and drove away slowly, like they had all the time in the world. Margaret slammed the door and locked it. Then she locked the deadbolt. Then she engaged the security chain. Her hands were shaking so badly, she could barely work the locks. Mrs. Chen appeared beside her. Mrs. Harrison, what's going on? Who were those men? Margaret leaned against the door, trying to catch her breath. They're bad people, very bad people. And they want to hurt Emma. Emma? Mrs. Chen looked confused. The girl upstairs? Why would anyone want to hurt a child? I can't explain it right now, Margaret said. But I need you to trust me. We need to protect her. Can you do that? Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. Of course, whatever you need. Good. First, I need you to call our security company. Tell them I want guards outside the house, 24 hours a day. I don't care what it costs. Mrs. Harrison, it's 8 o'clock at night. I don't know if... Tell them I'll pay triple their normal rate, Margaret interrupted. Tell them it's an emergency. Tell them lives are at stake. Mrs. Chen nodded and pulled out her phone. Margaret ran upstairs. Her heart was racing. She needed to check on Emma, make sure she was safe. The collectors knowing she was here changed everything. She knocked on the bathroom door. Emma, are you okay in there? No answer. Margaret's heart stopped. Emma? Still nothing. Margaret tried the door handle. It was unlocked. She pushed the door open carefully. The bathroom was empty. The bathtub was full of water, still steaming slightly. Emma's dirty clothes were in a pile on the floor, but Emma herself was gone. Emma! Margaret called out, panic rising in her chest. Emma! Where are you? She ran to Emma's bedroom. Also empty. She checked Thomas's room. Not there either. Emma! Margaret shouted. I'm here, a small voice said. Margaret spun around. Emma was standing at the end of the hallway, wearing the clean clothes Mrs. Chen had left for her. Her wet hair was dripping water onto the carpet. But she wasn't looking at Margaret. She was staring out the hallway window at the street below. They found me, Emma said flatly. The collectors. They're gone now, but they'll be back. They always come back. Margaret rushed to Emma and grabbed her shoulders. How did you know they were here? You were in the bath. I felt them, Emma said. It's hard to explain. When collectors get close, Wishborn can sense it. It's like a cold feeling in your chest, like ice water in your veins. I felt it the moment they arrived. Why didn't you say something? Margaret demanded. What good would it have done? Emma asked. You were already handling it. And besides, if I had gone downstairs, they would have taken me. They would have hurt you to get to me. At least this way, you're safe." "I don't care about being safe," Margaret said fiercely. "I care about protecting you." Emma finally turned to look at Margaret. Her blue eyes were full of sadness. "This is why I shouldn't have come here. I'm putting you and Thomas in danger. The collectors won't stop. They'll keep coming. They'll watch the house. They'll follow you. And eventually, they'll find a way to get to me. Then we won't let them," Margaret said firmly. "You don't understand," Emma said, her voice breaking. "They're not just regular people. They have resources, power. They can make people disappear, and nobody asks questions. They've been hunting Wishborn for decades, maybe centuries. They're really good at what they do." "I don't care," Margaret said. "You're my daughter. I lost you once. I'm not losing you again." "But you never really had me," Emma said softly. "I died before I was even born. This version of me that's standing here, I'm just a copy. A wish made flesh. I'm not real." Margaret grabbed Emma's face in her hands, forcing the girl to look at her. "You listen to me. You are real. You are standing here. You are breathing. You have thoughts and feelings and dreams. That makes you real. I don't care how you got here. I don't care if you're made of wishes or stardust or pure magic. You are my daughter, and you are real." Tears started falling down Emma's face. "I'm scared, Mom. I'm so scared. Not of dying. I've always known I would die young. But I'm scared of them hurting you and Thomas to get to me. I'm scared of what they'll do if they catch me. I'm scared that I've made a terrible mistake by coming here." Margaret pulled Emma into a tight hug. "You didn't make a mistake. You came home. That's exactly where you should be." They stood there in the hallway, holding each other, while the evening light faded outside the window. Finally, Emma pulled back and wiped her eyes. "What did that man say to you? The one at the door?" "His name is Mr. Crane," Margaret said. "He said a lot of things, mostly threats. He said they'll be watching us, waiting for us to make a mistake." "He's telling the truth," Emma said. "They will watch. They'll follow you everywhere. They won't attack in public, too many witnesses. But the moment you're alone, the moment you let your guard down, they'll strike." "Then we don't let our guard down," Margaret said. "I'm calling in every favor I have. Security guards, private investigators, maybe even the police." "The police can't help," Emma said. "Most people can't even see what Wishborn truly are. To them, I just look like a normal homeless girl. The collectors will have some official-looking paperwork saying I'm mentally ill and they're taking me to get treatment. The police will believe them." "Then what do we do?" Margaret asked, feeling helpless. Emma was quiet for a moment, thinking. "We need to learn more about the collectors, about who they are and what they really want. There might be other Wishborn out there, people like me, who know how to survive. If we can find them, maybe they can help." "How do we find them?" Margaret asked. "I'm not sure," Emma admitted. "When you're Wishborn, you can usually sense others like you, but it only works if they're close by, within a few miles maybe. So, we go looking," Margaret said. "We search the city, find other Wishborn, build an army if we have to." Emma looked at Margaret with surprise and hope. "You really mean that? You'd risk everything to help me?" "Emma, you're my daughter," Margaret said simply. "There's nothing I wouldn't risk for you." A small voice came from down the hall. "Emma, where are you?" It was Thomas. He'd felt his way out of his room and was standing there in his pajamas, looking worried. "I'm here, Thomas," Emma called out. Thomas walked toward her voice, his hands out in front of him. When he reached Emma, he grabbed her hand tightly. "I heard Mommy shouting," Thomas said. "I was scared something bad happened to you." "Nothing bad happened," Emma said gently. "I'm okay." "Promise?" Thomas asked. Emma looked at Margaret, then back at Thomas. "Promise." It was a lie, but it was a kind lie. Thomas didn't need to know about the collectors yet. He didn't need to know that danger was circling their house like hungry wolves. "Come on," Margaret said. "Mrs. Chen has dinner ready. Let's go eat as a family." The three of them went downstairs together. The dining room table was set with Margaret's best china. Mrs. Chen had made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh vegetables, and homemade rolls. It smelled incredible. Emma stared at the food like she couldn't believe it was real. "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" Margaret asked gently. Emma thought about it. "A few days ago. Someone gave me half a sandwich." "Half a sandwich," Margaret repeated, feeling sick. "In how many days?" "3," Emma said quietly. Margaret blinked back tears. Her daughter had been starving, living on scraps, while Margaret had been eating gourmet meals in this dining room. "Well, tonight you can eat as much as you want," Margaret said. "And tomorrow, and the day after, and every day from now on." They sat down together. Thomas insisted on sitting next to Emma. He kept reaching over to touch her arm, like he needed to make sure she was still there. Mrs. Chen served the food. Emma's hands shook as she picked up her fork. She took a small bite of chicken and closed her eyes. A single tear ran down her cheek. "Is it okay?" Margaret asked, worried. "It's perfect," Emma whispered. "I'd forgotten what real food tastes like." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Thomas told Emma about his school and his favorite teacher and how he was learning to read Braille. Emma listened like it was the most interesting story in the world. Margaret watched them and felt her heart swell. This is what family looked like. This is what she'd been missing. Not just another child, but this specific child. This brave, kind, impossible girl who had somehow fought her way back into existence just to be with them. Halfway through dinner, the lights suddenly went out. The whole house plunged into darkness. Thomas gasped. Emma went completely still. "It's okay," Margaret said quickly. "Probably just the circuit breaker." "Mrs. Chen, can you check it?" "Of course," Mrs. Chen said, standing up. Margaret could hear her footsteps heading toward the kitchen, where the circuit breaker box was located. But Emma grabbed Margaret's hand under the table. Her grip was tight, almost painful. "Mom," Emma whispered, "something's wrong. I can feel them. The collectors. They're close. Really close." Margaret's blood ran cold. "Are they in the house?" "I don't know," Emma breathed. "But they're nearby, and I think they cut the power on purpose." A crash came from somewhere upstairs. "Glass breaking," Thomas screamed. Margaret jumped to her feet, pulling both children close to her. "Mrs. Chen!" she called out. "Call 911!" No answer from Mrs. Chen. Another crash, this time closer, from the kitchen. Emma was shaking. "They're inside! They're inside the house!" Margaret's mind raced. She needed to protect the children, get them to safety. But where? How? The front door was too far. The back door went through the kitchen where the sounds were coming from. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps walking slowly through the house. More than one person. "Upstairs," Margaret whispered. "Thomas's panic room." When Robert had built the house, He'd insisted on a panic room, a small, reinforced space hidden behind a bookshelf in Thomas's room. Margaret had thought it was paranoid at the time. Now she was grateful for her husband's caution. They moved as quietly as they could toward the stairs. Margaret held Thomas's hand. Emma was right behind them. They were halfway up the stairs when a light suddenly blazed in their faces. A flashlight. Mr. Crane stood at the top of the stairs, smiling his terrible smile. "Going somewhere, Mrs. Harrison?" he asked softly. Margaret stood frozen on the staircase, her children behind her, as Mr. Crane's flashlight beam cut through the darkness like a knife. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might explode. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere to go. Mr. Crane blocked the way up. Unknown footsteps echoed below. They were trapped. "I warned you this would happen," Mr. Crane said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. "I told you we'd be watching. I told you that you'd make a mistake." "Breaking into someone's house isn't watching," Margaret said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "It's a felony. You'll go to prison for this." Mr. Crane laughed. "Prison? Mrs. Harrison, you still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? We don't follow your human laws. We follow the laws of reality itself, and reality says that girl behind you shouldn't exist." Emma's grip on Margaret's arm tightened. Margaret could feel her trembling. "Run," Emma whispered. "Mom, take Thomas and run. I'll distract them." "Absolutely not," Margaret said firmly. "How touching," Mr. Crane said. "The mother protecting her impossible daughter. But here's what you don't know, Mrs. Harrison. That girl you're defending, she's not just putting you in danger, she's putting the entire world in danger. Every second she exists, she creates tiny tears in the fabric of reality. Little cracks that grow bigger and bigger until—" He snapped his fingers. "Until everything falls apart. Buildings collapse, people vanish, time itself starts breaking down. That's what Wishborn do. They destroy everything around them just by existing." "That's not true," Emma shouted. "You're lying." "Am I?" Mr. Crane asked. He started walking down the stairs toward them, each step deliberate and threatening. "Tell me, Emma, have you noticed anything strange since you came through? Cars breaking down for no reason when you walk past them? Electronics failing? People getting sick? That's not coincidence. That's you. You're a walking disaster." Margaret saw Emma's face crumble with doubt and guilt. "No," Emma whispered. "No, I haven't hurt anyone." "Haven't you?" Mr. Crane was only a few steps away now. "What about Mrs. Chen? Where do you think she is right now?" Margaret's stomach dropped. "What did you do to her?" "Nothing permanent," Mr. Crane said casually. "She's unconscious in the kitchen. She'll wake up in an hour or two with a terrible headache. But it's Emma's presence that made her weak, made her easy to overpower. Without the Wishborn in your house, Mrs. Chen would have been strong enough to fight back." "You're twisting everything," Margaret said. "You hurt Mrs. Chen, not Emma." Mr. Crane sighed like he was explaining something to a very slow child. "Let me make this simple. We're taking Emma with us. You can either let us do it peacefully, or we can do it the hard way." "The hard way involves hurting you and your blind son. Which do you prefer?" Thomas whimpered behind Margaret. The sound of her baby boy scared made something inside Margaret snap. "You're not touching my children," Margaret said, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Either of them." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. With one quick motion, she pressed a button. Suddenly, every light in the house blazed on. The security system started blaring an alarm. And most importantly, The hidden cameras Margaret had installed after Robert's death started recording everything. Mr. Crane threw his arm over his eyes, temporarily blinded by the sudden light. Margaret didn't waste the opportunity. "Run!" she screamed. She grabbed Thomas with one hand and Emma with the other, and they rushed past Mr. Crane while he was still recovering. They made it to the top of the stairs and ran down the hallway toward Thomas's room. Behind them, Mr. Crane roared with fury. "Stop them! Don't let them reach the panic room!" Footsteps pounded up the stairs, multiple footsteps. How many collectors were in the house? They burst into Thomas's room. Margaret rushed to the bookshelf and pressed the hidden button. The shelf swung open, revealing a small steel door. Inside. "Now," Margaret urged. Emma helped Thomas through the door. Margaret followed, pulling the bookshelf closed behind them just as the collectors reached the hallway. The panic room was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, with reinforced steel walls. There was a security monitor showing camera feeds from around the house, a phone connected to a secure line, some emergency food and water, and a couple of chairs. Margaret grabbed the phone and dialed 911. 911. "What's your emergency?" "This is Margaret Harrison at 1247 Park Avenue. There are intruders in my house. Multiple armed intruders. They've attacked my housekeeper, and they're trying to hurt my children." "Send police immediately." "Stay on the line, ma'am. Units are being dispatched now." On the security monitor, Margaret could see 3 collectors in Thomas's room, searching for them. Mr. Crane was examining the bookshelf, running his hands along it, clearly knowing the panic room was there but unable to figure out how to open it. "They won't get in," Margaret told the children. "This room is designed to withstand anything. The police will be here in minutes." But Emma was shaking her head. "The police can't stop them. The collectors will just show them fake documents. They'll say I'm mentally ill and they're here to take me to treatment. The police will believe them." "Not with video evidence of them breaking into my house," Margaret said. "The cameras caught everything." Emma looked at the monitor, then back at Margaret. "You planned this. You knew they might come." "I hoped they wouldn't," Margaret said. "But I prepared for the possibility. After Robert died, I installed a state-of-the-art security system. The footage is automatically uploaded to a secure cloud server. Even if they destroy the cameras, the evidence is already safe." For the first time since the collectors arrived, Emma smiled. It was a small, watery smile, but it was real. "You're amazing, Mom." Margaret pulled both children close. "I protect what's mine." They huddled together in the small room, listening to the muffled sounds of the collectors searching the house. Thomas was crying softly. Emma was still trembling. Margaret held them both, making silent promises to keep them safe no matter what. In the distance, sirens began to wail, getting closer. On the monitor, Margaret saw Mr. Crane's head snap up. He said something to his associates that Margaret couldn't hear. Then all 3 collectors ran out of Thomas's room and disappeared down the stairs. 2 minutes later, the police arrived. Margaret watched on the monitor as officers swarmed the house, weapons drawn. She saw them find Mrs. Chen unconscious in the kitchen, saw them check every room, saw them give the all-clear signal. Only then did Margaret open the panic room door. The next 3 hours were chaos. Police officers everywhere, paramedics checking on Mrs. Chen, who had a concussion but would be okay, detectives asking Margaret hundreds of questions about the intruders. Margaret showed them the security footage. The videos clearly showed the collectors breaking in, cutting the power, attacking Mrs. Chen, and chasing Margaret and the children through the house. "Do you know these men?" Detective Rodriguez asked. "Have you seen them before?" "One of them came to my door earlier tonight," Margaret said. "He said his name was Mr. Crane. He was looking for Emma. She gestured to where Emma sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. "And who is Emma?" Detective Rodriguez asked. Margaret hesitated. What could she say? That Emma was her dead daughter brought back to life by her husband's dying wish? That she was being hunted by people who believed she was destroying reality just by existing? "She's my daughter," Margaret said simply. I had her when I was very young and gave her up for adoption. She recently found me, and we were reconnecting. These men are somehow connected to her past. They want to take her away. It wasn't the full truth, but it was close enough, and it was something the police could understand and work with. Detective Rodriguez wrote everything down. "We'll put out an APB for these men. With this video evidence, we can charge them with breaking and entering, assault, attempted kidnapping. They're going away for a long time." Margaret nodded, but she could see Emma's expression. The girl didn't believe it would be that simple, and honestly, neither did Margaret. After the police finally left, Margaret made sure all the doors and windows were locked. She activated every security system. She even moved furniture in front of the doors as extra barriers. Then she sat down with Emma and Thomas in the living room. It was past midnight, but none of them could sleep. "Tell me everything," Margaret said to Emma. "Everything about being wishborn. About the collectors. About what's really happening. No more secrets." Emma took a deep breath. "Okay, but it's going to sound crazy." "Everything about today has been crazy," Margaret said. "I think I can handle it." Emma nodded and began. Wishborn are people who died, but were brought back by someone's powerful wish. Usually, it's a parent who lost a child, or a child who lost a parent. The wish has to be pure and desperate and full of love. So much love that it creates a hole in reality, and the dead person can come through that hole. But if wishes could bring people back from the dead, wouldn't it happen all the time? Margaret asked. "It takes more than just wishing," Emma explained. "It takes a wish made at the exact moment of death. When someone is dying, there's this brief instant where the barrier between life and death gets thin. If someone who loves them makes a powerful enough wish in that exact instant, it can create a doorway." "Robert's plane crash," Margaret whispered. "In those final moments, he was thinking about you." Emma nodded. "He was thinking about how he had to choose between me and Thomas 13 years ago. How he wished he could give you back both your children. And that wish, combined with his love for our family, was strong enough to pull me through." "But why do the collectors want to stop you?" Thomas asked. "Why do they think you're dangerous?" Emma's expression grew sad. "Because they're not entirely wrong. Wishborn do cause problems. Small problems at first. Electronics malfunction around us. Weather patterns get weird. Sometimes people near us get sick or have accidents. It's not intentional. We can't control it. We're like glitches in reality. Our existence creates tiny errors in how the world works." "The car's breaking down," Margaret said, remembering Mr. Crane's words. "The people getting sick. That's real?" "Sometimes," Emma admitted. "Not always. Most of the time we can exist without causing major problems. But the longer a wishborn lives, the bigger the glitches get. That's why wishborn usually only live for a few months after they come through. Our bodies can't handle existing in a world that doesn't want us here." "Your heart," Margaret said. Emma nodded. "My heart never fully formed when I was in the womb. Coming through the wish door didn't fix that. If anything, it made it worse. My heart is trying to pump blood through a body that shouldn't exist. It's wearing out fast." There has to be a way to fix it, Margaret said desperately. Surgery, a transplant, something. It wouldn't work, Emma said gently. I'm not sick in a normal way. My entire existence is the sickness. Every doctor in the world could look at me, and they wouldn't be able to help, because the problem isn't medical, it's cosmic. Margaret felt tears running down her face. So you're just supposed to die? Again? That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Emma said with a sad smile. But at least I got this. I got to meet you and Thomas. I got to know what it feels like to have a family. That's more than most wishborn ever get. Most wishborn? Margaret caught the phrase. There are others? There used to be, Emma said. But the collectors have been hunting us for a long time. There aren't many left. Maybe a dozen in the whole world. We try to stay hidden. Stay away from people we love, so we don't put them in danger. That's why you were living in the park, Margaret realized. You were trying to protect us by staying away. I was, Emma admitted, but I was weak. I couldn't help myself. I just wanted to be near you and Thomas, even if I could only watch from a distance. Thomas, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. I'm glad you were weak. I'm glad you came to us. Because now you're home and we're a family and I don't care about collectors or reality glitches or any of that stuff. You're my sister and I love you. Emma started crying. I love you too, little brother. They all hugged, the three of them holding each other tight. Margaret kissed the tops of both children's heads and made a silent vow. She would fight for Emma. She would find a way to save her, even if it meant breaking the rules of reality itself. The next morning, Margaret called an emergency meeting with Robert's lawyers. Not to discuss business or money, but to ask them a very specific question. I need to find someone, she told them. Someone who knows about things that shouldn't be possible. Someone who deals with unusual situations. The senior lawyer, Mr. Peterson, gave her a strange look. Mrs. Harrison, are you feeling all right? Perhaps the stress of last night's break-in. I'm perfectly fine, Margaret interrupted. And I'm serious. Robert once mentioned that his company did research into experimental science, things that most people thought were impossible. I need to talk to whoever was in charge of that division. Mr. Peterson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You're talking about Dr. Sarah Chen. She ran Harrison Tech's Advanced Research Department. But Mrs. Harrison, that division was shut down after your husband's death. The board thought the research was too unconventional. I don't care what the board thought, Margaret said. I want to talk to Dr. Chen. Where is she now? She has a private laboratory in Brooklyn, Mr. Peterson said reluctantly. But I should warn you, her research is highly controversial. Some people call her a genius. Others call her a lunatic. Perfect, Margaret said. Give me her address. That afternoon, Margaret left Emma and Thomas at home with Mrs. Chen, who insisted she was fine despite her concussion, and 4 armed security guards. Then she drove to Brooklyn to find Dr. Sarah Chen. The laboratory was in an old warehouse near the water. It looked abandoned from the outside, but when Margaret knocked, the door was answered by a woman in her 50s with wild gray hair and intense eyes. Dr. Chen? Margaret asked. Who's asking? The woman replied. My name is Margaret Harrison, Robert Harrison's widow. Dr. Chen's expression changed immediately. Robert's wife. Come in, quickly. Inside, the warehouse was filled with strange equipment. Computers with displays showing complex equations, machines that hummed with energy, charts and diagrams covering every wall. I know why you're here, Dr. Chen said without preamble. You have a wishborn. Margaret's mouth fell open. How did you— Your husband told me about the twins, Dr. Chen said. About the choice he had to make. About the daughter who died. And I've been monitoring reality fluctuations in Manhattan. There's been a significant anomaly centered around your address for the past 3 months. I assumed it was related, but I didn't want to intrude. Wishborn situations are delicate. Quote, You know about Wishborn? Margaret asked, hardly able to believe it. You believe they're real? Believe? Dr. Chen laughed. Mrs. Harrison? I've dedicated my life to studying them. Robert funded my research for years. We were trying to understand the mechanics of wish-based resurrection, trying to find a way to stabilize Wishborn so they could live normal lives. Hope flared in Margaret's chest. Did you succeed? Can you help my daughter? Dr. Chen's expression turned sad. I'm sorry. We were close to a breakthrough when Robert died, but without his funding, I had to shut down most of my research. The equipment I needed was too expensive. The experiments took too long. I've been working alone ever since, making little progress. Margaret's hope dimmed. So there's nothing you can do? I didn't say that, Dr. Chen said. I said I made little progress. But I did make some. I discovered something interesting about Wishborn. They're not just random anomalies. They're connected to their wishmakers. In your daughter's case, she's connected to Robert, and through Robert, she's connected to you and your son. What does that mean? Margaret asked. It means, Dr. Chen said slowly, that family love is what's keeping her alive. Every moment you spend with her, every time you show her love and acceptance, it strengthens her connection to this reality. It makes her more real. So being with us helps her, Margaret asked. Yes, but it's not enough on its own. Her heart is still failing. Love can slow the process, but it can't stop it. Doctor. Chen paused. However, there might be a way to save her. It's dangerous. It's never been tested, and it would require all of you to risk everything. Tell me, Margaret demanded. Whatever it is, I'll do it. Dr. Chen walked to a computer and pulled up a diagram. It showed 2 circles connected by a thin line. One circle was labeled Wishborn, and the other was labeled Family. Wishborn exist in a state between life and death, Doctor, Chen explained. They're not fully in either place. But what if we could anchor them? What if we could tie them so completely to this reality that the universe had no choice but to accept them as real? How would we do that? Margaret asked. By creating a resonance bond, Dr. Chen said. Essentially, you would share your life force with Emma. You, Thomas, and anyone else who loves her would contribute a small piece of your own existence to strengthen hers. It wouldn't kill you. You'd barely notice the loss. But combined together, it might be enough to stabilize Emma's heart. Do it, Margaret said immediately. Whatever you need, I'll pay for it. Whatever the risks, I'll take them. Mrs. Harrison, you need to understand. Dr. Chen started. No, Margaret interrupted. You need to understand. That girl is my daughter. I lost her once already. I will not lose her again. If sharing my life force can save her, then take it. Take all of it if you have to. Dr. Chen studied Margaret for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right, but we'll need time to prepare, and we'll need Emma here. The procedure requires her presence. How much time? Margaret asked. 3 days to set up the equipment. Maybe a week to run the initial tests. Emma might not have a week, Margaret said. The collectors are still out there. They're hunting her. Then we work fast, Doctor, Chen said firmly. I'll call in some favors. Get the equipment we need. You bring Emma here tomorrow night, after dark, so the collectors won't see her. We'll begin immediately. Margaret shook Dr. Chen's hand. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Dr. Chen said. This might not work. And even if it does, the collectors won't stop hunting her. We'll have to deal with them too. One problem at a time, Margaret said. She drove home feeling hopeful for the first time since this whole thing started. There was a chance, a real chance to save Emma. But when she pulled up to her mansion, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The front door was wide open. All 4 security guards were unconscious on the lawn. And standing in the doorway, smiling that terrible smile, was Mr. Crane. Mrs. Harrison, he called out. So glad you could join us. We've been waiting for you. Margaret ran toward the house, her heart pounding. Emma, Thomas. No answer. She burst through the door and stopped dead. The living room was destroyed. Furniture overturned. Pictures knocked off walls. Signs of a struggle. Mrs. Chen was sitting on the floor, crying. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen sobbed. I'm so sorry. They took them. They took the children. Margaret felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Both of them? They took both children? Mrs. Chen nodded miserably. Thomas tried to protect Emma. He fought them even though he couldn't see. And Emma gave herself up. She told them she'd go willingly if they didn't hurt Thomas. But they took him anyway. They said, Mrs. Chen choked on her words. They said if you ever wanted to see your children again, you'd have to make a choice. Just like Robert did 13 years ago. Mr. Crane stepped into the room. That's right, Mrs. Harrison. Same choice your husband faced. Save one child or lose both. We'll give you exactly 24 hours to decide. Will you sacrifice Emma to save Thomas, or will you sacrifice Thomas to save Emma? Choose wisely. Because at midnight tomorrow, whichever child you don't choose will die. Margaret Harrison stood in her destroyed living room, staring at Mr. Crane with pure hatred burning in her eyes. Her hands were clenched into fists so tight her nails dug into her palms and drew blood. Behind her, Mrs. Chen was still crying, but Margaret barely heard it. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heart and Mr. Crane's awful words echoing in her mind. Choose one child or lose both. You're a monster, Margaret whispered. Mr. Crane tilted his head, studying her like she was an interesting bug under a microscope. Am I? Or am I simply doing what needs to be done? Your husband faced this same choice 13 years ago. He chose the natural child over the impossible one. He chose reality over fantasy. Now it's your turn to make the same wise decision. Where are they? Margaret demanded. Where are my children? Somewhere safe, Mr. Crane said. Somewhere you'll never find them without our help. You have 24 hours, Mrs. Harrison. At midnight tomorrow, you will call this number. He placed a business card on the broken coffee table. And you will tell us your choice. Emma or Thomas, the wishborn who shouldn't exist, or the real son who deserves to live. Choose the girl, and we'll return your boy unharmed. Choose the boy, and we'll take care of the girl's problem permanently and return her body for burial. Either way, this ends tomorrow night. There has to be another option, Margaret said desperately. Take me instead. I'll give you anything. Money, property, everything I own. Just give me back my children. Both of them." Mr. Crane laughed. "Your money means nothing to us. The collectors exist to maintain the natural order of reality. We've been doing this work for centuries, long before your family's wealth existed. This isn't about money, Mrs. Harrison. It's about balance. Your daughter died for a reason. She was meant to die. Allowing her to continue existing creates chaos, damages the world, hurts innocent people. How many more have to suffer because you're too selfish to let her go?" "She's not hurting anyone!" Margaret shouted. "Isn't she?" Mr. Crane gestured to Mrs. Chen. "Your housekeeper has a concussion. Your security guards are unconscious outside. Your house is destroyed. Your son has been kidnapped. And all of this happened because Emma exists. All of this pain and violence and chaos is her fault. If she had stayed dead like she was supposed to, your family would be safe right now." Margaret felt like she'd been slapped. Because part of what Mr. Crane said was true. If Emma hadn't come back, the collectors wouldn't be here. Thomas wouldn't be kidnapped. Her home wouldn't be destroyed. But Emma was still her daughter. And Margaret refused to believe that her child's existence was a mistake. "Get out of my house," Margaret said quietly. 24 hours, Mr. Crane repeated. He walked to the door, then turned back. "And Mrs. Harrison? Don't bother going to the police. Don't bother trying to find your children yourself. We have resources you can't imagine. Technology you wouldn't believe. If you try to be clever, if you try to save both children, we'll know, and we'll kill them both. Your only hope is to choose. Make the same choice your husband made. Save the real child. Let the impossible one go." Then he was gone, disappearing into the night like smoke. Margaret stood there for a long moment, barely breathing. Then her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor. A scream tore from her throat, a sound of pure anguish that came from the deepest part of her soul. Mrs. Chen crawled over and put her arms around Margaret. They held each other and cried. The build-up, Margaret's plan. After she couldn't cry anymore, Margaret's grief transformed into something else, something harder, something dangerous. Determination. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and pulled out her phone. Her hands were steady now. Her mind was clear. She wasn't going to choose between her children. She was going to save them both. And if the collectors tried to stop her, she would destroy them. First, she called Detective Rodriguez. "I need your help. The men who broke into my house yesterday came back. They kidnapped my children." "Both children?" Rodriguez asked, alarmed. "When did this happen?" "About 20 minutes ago, they knocked out my security guards. They left a message saying I have to choose which child to save." "That's insane," Rodriguez said. "We're sending officers to your location right now, and I'm putting out an Amber Alert for both children immediately." "Thank you," Margaret said. But she knew the police wouldn't be enough. The collectors had been hunting Wishborne for centuries. They knew how to hide, how to avoid detection. Traditional law enforcement wouldn't find them in time. Next, Margaret called Dr. Chen. They took Emma, and they took Thomas, too. "I heard," Dr. Chen said grimly. "I have contacts in the Wishborne community. Word spreads fast when the collectors make a major move. Where are you now?" "At home. But I'm coming to your laboratory. I need your help." "Of course. But Mrs. Harrison, you need to understand. The collectors are powerful. They have technology that can track Wishborn, equipment that can sense reality fluctuations. If we try to rescue Emma, they'll see us coming. Then we don't let them see us, Margaret said. You said you've been studying Wishborn for years. You must know their weaknesses, ways to beat them. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. There might be something. It's risky, but if you're willing to try— I'm willing to try anything, Margaret interrupted. Then get here as fast as you can, and bring anything of Emma's that she touched frequently, something with her essence on it. Margaret looked around the destroyed living room. Then she saw it. Emma's dirty backpack from when she lived on the streets. She'd left it in the corner when she went upstairs for her bath last night. I have something, Margaret said. I'm on my way. Happened today. Have I, Margaret said. Have I, Margaret said. And founded Tay. End quote. She hung up and turned to Mrs. Chen. I need you to stay here and talk to the police. Tell them everything. Show them the security footage. Keep them busy. Where are you going? Mrs. Chen asked. To get my children back, Margaret said. She grabbed Emma's backpack and ran out to her car. As she drove through the dark streets toward Brooklyn, Margaret's mind raced. She kept seeing Thomas's scared face, Emma's sad eyes. Both of her children in danger because of her. No, not because of her. Because of the collectors. Because of people who believed some lives were worth more than others. Who thought they had the right to decide who got to exist and who didn't. Margaret had never been a violent person. She'd never hurt anyone in her life. But right now, in this moment, she understood what Robert must have felt when he died. The desperate, fierce need to protect your family. To give everything, sacrifice everything, to keep them safe. If the collectors hurt her children, Margaret would make them pay. She didn't know how. She didn't have their powers, or their technology, or their centuries of experience. But she had something they didn't have. She had love. Pure, unconditional, unstoppable mother's love. And that was the most powerful force in the universe. When Margaret arrived at Dr. Chen's laboratory, she found the scientist already hard at work. Machines hummed, computers displayed complex data, and in the center of the room stood a strange device that looked like a metal archway covered in glowing symbols. "What is that?" Margaret asked, staring at the archway. "A reality tracker, Doctor," Chen said. "It can sense disturbances in the fabric of space-time. When Wishborn exist, they create tiny ripples. This machine can detect those ripples and trace them back to their source. So you can find Emma?" Hope flared in Margaret's chest. "Potentially. But there's a problem. The collectors have been hiding Emma behind some kind of shield. I can sense that she exists, but I can't pinpoint her exact location. The signal is scrambled." Margaret's hope dimmed. "Then how do we find her?" "That's where Emma's backpack comes in," Dr. Chen said. She took the backpack from Margaret and pulled out the items inside. A worn notebook, some clothes, that old stuffed rabbit. Dr. Chen examined each item carefully. Then she picked up the rabbit and held it under a strange purple light. "This," she said, "this has the strongest connection. Emma must have carried this with her for a long time. Can you use it to find her?" Margaret asked. "Better than that," Dr. Chen said. "I can use it to communicate with her." She placed the stuffed rabbit in the center of the reality tracker. The archway began to glow brighter. Symbols spun and shifted. Then suddenly a voice came through. Faint and distorted, but recognizable. "Mom?" It was Emma. Margaret rushed to the archway. "Emma! Emma, baby, are you okay? I'm okay. Emma's voice came through, clearer now. They haven't hurt me. But Mom, they have Thomas. They're keeping us in separate rooms. I can hear him crying. Margaret's heart broke. Where are you? What building? What street? I don't know, Emma said, frustration in her voice. They blindfolded us during the drive. We could be anywhere in the city. But Mom, I heard them talking. The collectors aren't going to wait 24 hours. Mr. Crane lied to you. They're going to kill us both tonight. At midnight, no matter what you choose. Margaret felt ice water flood her veins. What? Dr. Chen's face had gone pale. That makes sense, she said quietly. The collectors never intended to let you choose. They were just buying time, keeping you distracted while they completed their mission. Their mission? Margaret asked. To eliminate Emma and anyone who knows about her, Dr. Chen said. That includes Thomas, and probably you too, Mrs. Harrison. The collectors don't leave loose ends. Emma's voice came through the archway again, urgent and scared. Mom, you have to run. Get as far away as you can. Don't try to rescue us. They're too powerful. Just save yourself. Absolutely not, Margaret said fiercely. I'm coming to get you, both of you. You can't, Emma cried. They'll kill you. Then they'll have to kill me, Margaret said, because I'm not leaving my children. Dr. Chen, can you trace her location through this connection? Dr. Chen was already working at her computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. I'm trying. The signal is weak, but yes, I'm getting something. The warehouse district, near the old shipping yards. I can narrow it down to maybe 3 or 4 buildings. That's good enough, Margaret said. Let's go. Mrs. Harrison. Wait, Dr. Chen said. We need a plan. We can't just walk in there. The collectors will have guards, weapons, technology we don't understand. I don't care, Margaret said. My children are going to die at midnight. That's 3 hours from now. We don't have time for complicated plans. Dr. Chen looked at Margaret for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right, but we're not going alone. She picked up her phone and made a call. Marcus, it's Sarah. I need your help. And bring everyone you can trust. Who's Marcus? Margaret asked. A friend, Doctor, Chen said. And the father of a wish-born child. His daughter died 2 years ago when the collectors found her. He's been waiting for a chance to fight back. Tonight, he gets that chance. 20 minutes later, 5 more people arrived at the laboratory. 3 men and 2 women, all with hard eyes and determined expressions. Dr. Chen introduced them quickly. This is Marcus, she said, pointing to a large black man with a scar across his cheek. His daughter was a wishborn named Claire. And this is Patricia, whose son was wishborn, and Frank, whose wife was brought back through a wish, but taken by the collectors. And, we get it, Margaret interrupted. You've all lost someone to the collectors. You all want revenge. Good. So do I. Let's go get my children. Marcus stepped forward. With all respect, Mrs. Harrison, we're not doing this for revenge. We're doing this because the collectors need to be stopped. They've terrorized the Wishborn community for too long, murdered too many innocent people. Tonight, we fight back, not just for your kids, but for everyone they've hurt. Margaret looked at these 5 strangers who were willing to risk their lives to help her. Thank you, she said simply. Don't thank us yet, Marcus said. This is going to be dangerous. Some of us might not make it out alive. I understand, Margaret said. But we're going anyway. They loaded into 2 cars, Margaret and Dr. Chen in one, Marcus and the others in the second. As they drove through the dark city streets toward the warehouse district, Dr. Chen explained the plan. The reality tracker showed the strongest signal coming from an old factory building near Pier 47. That's most likely where Emma and Thomas are being held. We'll split into 2 teams. Marcus's team will create a distraction at the front entrance. Margaret and I will sneak in through the back and find the children. What kind of distraction? Margaret asked. Marcus's voice came through the car's speakers. They were on a conference call between both vehicles. We're going to challenge the collectors directly. Demand they release all Wishborn in their custody. They'll refuse, of course. But while they're focused on us, you 2 can slip in unnoticed. That's incredibly dangerous for you, Margaret said. We know, Marcus replied, but it's the only way. The collectors have security systems that can detect reality fluctuations. They'll sense you coming, Mrs. Harrison, because you have Emma's genetic signature. But they won't sense us. We're not Wishborn or related to any. We can get close. They arrived at the warehouse district just before 11 o'clock. The area was dark and deserted, filled with abandoned buildings and rusted shipping containers. In the distance, Margaret could see the old factory building Dr. Chen had identified. It looked abandoned, but she could see faint lights in some of the windows. Her children were in there. She could feel it. Both cars parked a block away. Everyone got out and gathered in the shadow of a large container. Remember the plan, Marcus said. Dr. Chen and Mrs. Harrison go in through the back door on the east side. The rest of us approach from the front. We give you 10 minutes to get into position. Then we make noise. Margaret nodded. She turned to Dr. Chen. Ready? As ready as I'll ever be, Dr. Chen said. They separated from the group and moved quietly through the darkness toward the factory. Margaret's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound made her jump. But she kept moving, 1 foot in front of the other, getting closer to her children. They reached the back of the factory. There was indeed a door, rusty and half-hanging off its hinges. Dr. Chen pulled out a small device that looked like a modified phone. This will detect electronic security systems, she whispered. If there are cameras or alarms, it'll show us. She scanned the door. The device beeped softly. 2 cameras. 1 alarm sensor. But they're old technology. I can disable them. Dr. Chen worked quickly, using some kind of electromagnetic pulse from her device. After a minute, she nodded. We're clear. But once we go inside, we're on our own. My device can't help us past this point. Then we'll have to be careful, Margaret whispered. They pushed open the door and slipped inside. The factory was dark and dusty. Moonlight streamed through broken windows, creating strange shadows everywhere. The air smelled like rust and decay. Old machinery sat silent and forgotten. And somewhere in this building, Emma and Thomas were waiting. Margaret and Dr. Chen moved through the factory quietly, checking each room. Storage areas filled with old crates, offices with rotting desks, a break room with chairs covered in cobwebs. Then they heard voices. Margaret froze. The voices were coming from deeper in the building. She crept forward carefully, Dr. Chen right behind her. They reached a metal staircase leading down to a basement level. The voices were louder now. Margaret recognized Mr. Crane's smooth, dangerous tone. Nearly midnight. Time to end this. Another voice, one Margaret didn't recognize. What about the mother? Mrs. Harrison hasn't called with her choice. Mr. Crane laughed. Because there never was a choice. We were always going to kill both children. The boy because he knows too much, and the girl because she shouldn't exist. Mrs. Harrison was just a distraction. By the time she realizes we lied, it'll be too late. Margaret's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to run down those stairs and tear Mr. Crane apart with her bare hands. But Dr. Chen held her back. "Wait," she mouthed silently. "Not yet." They crept down the stairs as quietly as they could. At the bottom, they found a long hallway with several metal doors. Behind one of those doors, Margaret could hear a child crying. "Thomas." She moved toward the sound, but Dr. Chen grabbed her arm and pointed to the end of the hallway. Through a window in a door, they could see into a large room. Mr. Crane was there, along with 3 other collectors. And in the center of the room, tied to chairs, were Emma and Thomas. Both children looked terrified but unharmed. Emma was talking to Thomas quietly, trying to comfort him even though she was just as scared. Margaret's heart swelled with love and pride. Her daughter was so brave, so strong. Dr. Chen checked her watch and showed it to Margaret. 2 minutes until 11:10. 2 minutes until Marcus's team created their distraction. They waited in the darkness, watching through the window. Margaret counted every second. Then, exactly at 11:10, all hell broke loose. An explosion rocked the front of the building. Alarms started blaring. Lights flashed. Through the window, Margaret saw Mr. Crane's head snap up in surprise. "What was that?" one of the collectors shouted. "Intruders at the front entrance," another yelled. "Multiple targets." Mr. Crane's face twisted with fury. "It's a rescue attempt. They've come for the children. All of you, go deal with them. I'll handle the prisoners." The 3 other collectors ran out of the room, heading toward the front of the building. Mr. Crane was alone now with Emma and Thomas. This was Margaret's chance. She burst through the door, Dr. Chen right behind her. Mr. Crane spun around, his eyes widening in surprise. "Mrs. Harrison, how unexpected." "Let my children go," Margaret said. Her voice was steady and cold as ice. Mr. Crane smiled. "Or what? You'll call the police? They can't help you here. You'll fight me? I'm trained in combat." "You're a wealthy widow who's never thrown a punch in her life." "You're right," Margaret said. "I'm not a fighter." She pulled something from her jacket, something she'd grabbed from home before leaving. Robert's gun. Her dead husband had kept it in his safe for protection. Margaret had never touched it before tonight, had never even wanted to. But tonight, she was willing to do anything to save her children. She pointed the gun at Mr. Crane with both hands, trying to keep them from shaking. "Untie my children. Now." From. Mr. Crane didn't look scared. He looked amused. "You won't shoot me, Mrs. Harrison. You're not a killer." "You threatened my babies," Margaret said quietly. "You kidnapped them. You were going to murder them. So yes, Mr. Crane, I am absolutely willing to shoot you." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Mr. Crane's face. But before anyone could move, Emma screamed. "Mom, behind you!" Margaret turned just in time to see another collector emerging from the shadows. She'd forgotten to check the whole room. Her mistake. The collector lunged at her. Margaret tried to aim the gun, but she was too slow. The collector knocked the weapon from her hands, and it skittered across the floor. Then everything happened at once. Dr. Chen tackled the collector, fighting desperately to hold him back. Mr. Crane moved toward Emma and Thomas, pulling out a knife. And Margaret, weaponless and terrified, did the only thing she could think of. She threw herself between Mr. Crane and her children. "If you want them," Margaret said, spreading her arms wide, "you'll have to go through me first." Mr. Crane's eyes narrowed. Fine. He raised the knife. And that's when the door exploded inward and Marcus charged through, followed by the rest of his team. Marcus burst through the door like a hurricane, his massive frame filling the doorway. His face was covered in blood from the fight outside, but his eyes blazed with righteous fury. Behind him came Patricia, Frank, and the others, all of them battered, but determined. Mr. Crane froze, with his knife still raised. For the first time since Margaret had met him, she saw genuine fear flash across his face. "Step away from the children," Marcus growled. His voice was low and dangerous, like distant thunder. Mr. Crane's hand tightened on the knife. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. That girl is an abomination. She's destroying reality itself just by breathing." "Funny," Marcus said, moving closer. "My daughter was supposedly destroying reality too, but the only thing that got destroyed was her, by people like you." The collector who had been fighting with Dr. Chen tried to run, but Patricia blocked his escape. She held up what looked like a modified taser. "This is for my son," she said, and pulled the trigger. The collector convulsed and dropped to the floor, unconscious. Mr. Crane realized he was surrounded, outnumbered, outmatched, but he wasn't giving up. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "There are dozens more collectors. Hundreds. We've been doing this for centuries. You can't stop us all." "Maybe not," Margaret said, stepping forward. She'd retrieved Robert's gun from where it had fallen. Now she pointed it directly at Mr. Crane's chest. "But we can stop you." "Margaret, no," Emma called out. "Don't do this. Don't become a killer because of me." Margaret looked at her daughter. Emma's face was bruised and tear-streaked, but her eyes were full of love and concern. Not for herself, but for Margaret. Even now, tied to a chair and facing death, Emma was worried about her mother's soul. And in that moment, Margaret realized Emma was right. She lowered the gun. "You're not worth it," Margaret said to Mr. Crane. "You're not worth becoming a monster." Marcus moved forward and grabbed Mr. Crane, twisting the knife out of his hand and pinning him against the wall. "But you are going to prison. And you're going to tell everyone what the collectors have been doing. All the children you've murdered. All the families you've destroyed. No one will believe you," Mr. Crane spat. "Wishborn aren't real. Not to normal people. You have no proof." "Actually," Dr. Chen said, pulling out her phone, "I've been recording everything. Every word you said about killing the children, about the collector's mission, about centuries of murders. It's all on video now, and it's already uploaded to 3 different secure servers." Mr. Crane's face went white. "You're done," Margaret said. She turned to Marcus. "Can you handle him? I need to get my children out of here." "With pleasure," Marcus said, tightening his grip on Mr. Crane. Margaret rushed to Emma and Thomas. Her hands shook as she untied the ropes binding them. The moment they were free, both children threw themselves into her arms. "Mom," Thomas sobbed. You came for us." "Of course I came," Margaret said, holding them both as tight as she could. "I will always come for you. Always." Emma was crying too, her thin body shaking with relief. I thought they were going to kill us. I thought we'd never see you again." "Never," Margaret whispered fiercely. "I will never let anyone take you from me again. Either of you." They held each other for a long moment, a family reunited. Around them, Marcus and his team were securing the other collectors who had been fighting outside. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer. "We need to leave," Dr. Chen said gently, "before the police get here and complicate things." They made their way out of the factory and back to the cars. Emma was limping badly, and Margaret realized with horror that the girl's breathing was labored and uneven. "Emma?" Margaret asked. "What's wrong?" "My heart," Emma gasped. "The stress. It's too much. Mom, I don't think I have much time left." They drove straight to Dr. Chen's laboratory, racing through red lights and empty streets. Emma was getting worse by the minute. Her lips were turning blue. Her breathing came in short, painful gasps. "Hold on, baby," Margaret kept saying. "Just hold on. We're almost there." Thomas sat next to Emma in the back seat, holding her hand. "Don't leave me," he kept whispering. "Please don't leave me. I just found you." When they reached the laboratory, Dr. Chen and Marcus carefully carried Emma inside and laid her on a medical table. Dr. Chen immediately began hooking her up to monitors. Margaret watched the screens with growing horror. Emma's heartbeat was irregular, skipping and stuttering. Her blood pressure was dangerously low. "We're losing her," Dr. Chen said urgently. "We need to do the resonance bond procedure now. Right now. There's no time for testing or preparation." "Do it!" Margaret said immediately. "Mrs. Harrison, you need to understand. We've never actually performed this procedure before. It's only theoretical. It might not work. Or worse, it might hurt you and Thomas in the process." "I don't care," Margaret said. "Tell me what to do." Dr. Chen worked quickly, setting up the equipment. The metal archway from earlier was repositioned, so Emma lay beneath it. Then Dr. Chen placed electrodes on Emma's chest, connecting her to the machine. "Margaret and Thomas, you need to stand on either side of her, Doctor," Chen instructed. "Hold her hands. The machine will create a connection between your life forces. It will hurt a lot, but you have to hold on. If you let go, Emma dies." "I won't let go," Margaret said. "Me neither," Thomas added, his small voice determined. They took their positions on either side of Emma. Margaret held her daughter's left hand. Thomas held her right. Dr. Chen activated the machine. At first, nothing happened. Then Margaret felt it, a pulling sensation, like something was drawing energy out of her very soul. It started as a gentle tug, then grew stronger, stronger, until it felt like her entire being was being stretched thin. Pain exploded through her body. Every nerve screamed. Every muscle burned. It was like being hit by lightning from the inside. But Margaret didn't let go. Beside her, Thomas was crying out in pain too, but his small hand stayed locked around Emma's. "Hold on!" Dr. Chen shouted over the humming of the machines. "Just a little longer!" The archway began to glow brighter and brighter. Symbols spun so fast they blurred together. The entire laboratory filled with an otherworldly light. And then, suddenly, Emma gasped. Her eyes flew open. Color rushed back into her face. Her heartbeat on the monitor steadied, growing stronger and more regular with each passing second. "It's working!" Dr. Chen exclaimed. "The bond is forming. Your life forces are stabilizing her." Margaret felt the pulling sensation change. Instead of draining her, it felt like giving a gift, like sharing something precious with someone you loved. The light from the archway grew so bright that Margaret had to close her eyes. She felt warmth spreading through her body, connecting her to Emma and Thomas. She could feel their hearts beating in time with hers, could feel their love and fear and hope all tangled together. And then the light faded. The machines powered down. Silence filled the laboratory. Margaret opened her eyes and looked down at Emma. The girl was breathing normally now. Her color was healthy. Her eyes were bright and alert. "Mom," Emma whispered, "did it work? Am I?" Dr. Chen checked the monitors, her eyes widening. "Your heart, Emma, your heart it's beating normally. The resonance bond worked. You're stabilized." "Does that mean I'm not dying?" Emma asked, hardly daring to hope. "It means," Dr. Chen said with a huge smile, "that you're anchored to this reality now. As long as Margaret and Thomas live, you'll live. You're real, Emma, fully real, not just a wishborn anymore, but a true member of this world." Emma started crying, not sad tears, but tears of pure joy and relief. Margaret pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tight. Thomas joined the hug, the three of them clinging to each other like they'd never let go. "We did it," Margaret sobbed. "We actually did it." Marcus and his team, who had been watching from the corner, started clapping. Patricia was crying too. Frank was smiling wider than Margaret had ever seen anyone smile. "This is what we've been fighting for," Marcus said quietly. "Proof that Wishborn can survive, can live full lives. You've just changed everything, Mrs. Harrison." Later, after Emma had been given a full examination and declared healthy, after the police had arrested Mr. Crane and begun investigating the collectors, after Marcus and his team had gone home, the Harrison family sat together in Dr. Chen's laboratory. Emma was wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate. Thomas sat pressed against her side. Margaret held both her children close. "I still can't believe it worked," Emma said softly. "I was so sure I was going to die. I'd already made peace with it." "You're not dying," Margaret said firmly. "Not now. Not for a very long time." "But there's something I don't understand," Emma said. She looked at Dr. Chen. "You said the resonance bond worked because of family love, because Mom and Thomas shared their life force with me. But I was connected to them through Dad's wish, right? So why didn't it work automatically? Why did we need the machine?" Dr. Chen hesitated. "That's complicated. Tell me." Emma pressed. "Please, I need to understand. One, I need to understand. Emma, 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 Emma." Dr. Chen sighed. "The truth is, you were never supposed to need the machine. The resonance bond should have formed naturally the moment you came through the wish door. The fact that it didn't means—" She paused. "It means something was blocking it. Something was preventing you from fully connecting to your family." "What could block it?" Margaret asked. "Guilt," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Specifically, Robert's guilt. When he made the wish that brought Emma back, part of him still believed he'd made the wrong choice 13 years ago. Part of him still felt guilty for choosing Thomas over Emma. That guilt created a barrier. It prevented Emma from fully bonding with the family because Robert's subconscious believed she shouldn't exist." Emma's face crumpled. "So, Dad didn't really want me back?" "No," Dr. Chen said quickly. "That's not what I'm saying. Robert wanted you back desperately. His conscious mind wished for you with every fiber of his being. But deep down, in a place he couldn't control, he still carried that guilt, that shame, and that's what kept you unstable." Margaret felt tears streaming down her face. She thought about Robert, about how he'd sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares, How he'd hold baby Thomas and stare at him with such intensity, like he was trying to memorize every detail. How he'd sometimes go quiet when people asked if they planned to have more children. He'd been carrying that guilt for 13 years, the guilt of choosing one child over another. And even in death, even when his love brought Emma back, that guilt had nearly destroyed her. "But we fixed it," Thomas said suddenly. "Right, Mom and I? We loved Emma so much that it broke through Dad's guilt. We made the bond work. We made the bond work." Dr. Chen smiled. "Exactly right, Thomas. Your love, pure, uncomplicated, guilt-free love, was strong enough to complete the bond that Robert started. You saved your sister." Thomas beamed with pride. But Emma was still troubled. "There's something else I don't understand. When I first came through the wish door, how did I know where to find you? How did I know to go to Central Park? How did I know all those songs that Dad used to sing?" "Because you're connected to Robert's memories," Dr. Chen explained. "When a wishborn comes through, they carry fragments of their wishmaker's mind. You knew where to find Margaret and Thomas because Robert knew. You knew the songs because Robert remembered them." "So I'm not really my own person," Emma said sadly. "I'm just a copy of Dad's memories." "No," Margaret said firmly, cupping Emma's face in her hands. "You are your own person. You have Robert's memories. Yes, but you also have your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own choices. You chose to sing in the park. You chose to approach Thomas. You chose to fight for your life. Those were your choices, Emma, not Robert's. You're not a copy of anyone. You're Emma Rose Harrison, my daughter, Thomas's sister, and you are real." Emma searched Margaret's eyes, looking for any hint of doubt or lies. She found only love and absolute certainty. "I'm real," Emma whispered, testing the words. "You're real," Margaret confirmed. "I'm real," Emma said louder, starting to smile. "You're real," Thomas shouted, bouncing excitedly. Emma started laughing, and the sound was the most beautiful thing Margaret had ever heard. Not the angelic singing voice that had first drawn her attention in the park, but real, genuine laughter. The laughter of a 13-year-old girl who had just been given a second chance at life. They were about to leave the laboratory and head home when Dr. Chen stopped them. "Wait," she said. "There's one more thing. Something the tests revealed. Something unexpected." "What is it?" Margaret asked, suddenly worried. "Is Emma okay?" "Emma is fine," Dr. Chen said. "Better than fine, actually. But when I was running the scans during the resonance bond procedure, I discovered something about the connection between all three of you." She pulled up data on her computer. "Look at this. These are your genetic markers. Margaret, Thomas, and Emma." Margaret looked at the screen, but the scientific data meant nothing to her. "I don't understand. What am I looking at?" "Blood types, genetic matches, cellular structures," Dr. Chen said. "And here's what's interesting. Emma's DNA matches both of yours perfectly, which makes sense. She's your biological daughter. But there's something else, something that shouldn't be possible." "What?" Margaret asked, her heart starting to race. Dr. Chen turned to look at them, her expression a mix of wonder and confusion. "Emma isn't just connected to you through the resonance bond. According to these tests, she's been connected to you since birth, since conception, actually. The genetic markers show that she's been drawing life force from both of you for her entire existence." "I don't understand," Margaret said. How is that possible? She died as a fetus. She wasn't born. That's what I thought too, Dr. Chen said. But these tests suggest otherwise. Emma didn't die 13 years ago. She's been alive this whole time, living in a state between worlds, drawing just enough life force from you and Thomas to survive, but not enough to fully manifest in this reality. Margaret felt the room spin. What are you saying? Dr. Chen took a deep breath. I'm saying that Robert didn't bring Emma back from death. He brought her through from wherever she'd been existing for the past 13 years. He didn't create a wishborn, he completed one. Emma has been your daughter all along. She's always been alive. You just couldn't see her. The laboratory went completely silent. Margaret stared at Dr. Chen, unable to process what she was hearing. That's impossible. I have the test results right here, Doctor, Chen said. And there's more. Thomas, when was the last time you were sick? Really sick? I mean, flu? Fever? Anything? Thomas thought about it. I don't know. Never, I guess. I had a cold when I was 4, but that's it. And Margaret, have you ever wondered why you've aged so well? Why you look 10 years younger than you should? Why you have so much energy despite everything you've been through? Margaret's heart was pounding now. What are you saying? I'm saying that the life force flow wasn't one way. Yes, Emma was drawing life force from you to survive, but she was also giving something back, sharing her existence with you, even though you couldn't see her. She's been protecting you, healing you, keeping you healthy and strong. For 13 years, Emma has been your invisible guardian angel. Emma stood up slowly, her face pale with shock. I've been alive this whole time? I've been with him for 13 years? Not physically, Dr. Chen clarified, but spiritually, energetically. Yes, you've been connected to your family since the moment of conception. The only thing that changed 3 months ago was that you became visible, tangible. But you've always been there. Margaret felt tears streaming down her face. She thought about all those times over the past 13 years when she'd felt a strange presence, like someone was watching over her, protecting her. She'd always attributed it to Robert's spirit, or her mother's, or just her imagination. But it had been Emma. Her daughter had been with her all along. The nightmares, Margaret whispered. After you were born, Thomas, you used to have terrible nightmares. You'd wake up crying, reaching for something we couldn't see. You'd say you were lonely, that you missed someone. I was missing Emma, Thomas said, his voice full of wonder. I could feel her. Even as a baby, I knew she was supposed to be there. That's why you recognized her voice in the park, Doctor, Chen said. That's why you had such a strong reaction to her singing. On some level, you've always known your sister existed. You've been connected your whole life. Emma walked over to Margaret and Thomas. She looked at them with tears streaming down her face. You never forgot me. Even when you didn't know I existed, you never forgot me. How could we forget you? Margaret said, pulling Emma into a hug. You're part of us. You always have been. Thomas joined the hug, wrapping his small arms around both his mother and sister. We're a family, he said simply. We've always been a family, even when we couldn't see all of us. They stood there, holding each other, crying and laughing at the same time. 3 people who had been connected by invisible threads for 13 years, finally complete. Dr. Chen wiped her own eyes. This is unprecedented, she said. I've studied Wishborn for decades, and I've never seen anything like this. Emma isn't just a Wishborn. She's something new, something that's been evolving and growing for 13 years. She's the first successful long-term Wishborn in recorded history. What does that mean for other Wishborn? Marcus asked. He'd been standing quietly in the corner, listening to everything. Can they be saved too? Possibly, Dr. Chen said. If we can replicate this resonance bond procedure, we might be able to stabilize other Wishborn, give them real lives, real futures. This could change everything for the entire Wishborn community. 3 days later, Margaret sat in her mansion's living room with Emma and Thomas. The house had been repaired, the broken furniture replaced, the destroyed pictures rehung on the walls. But it didn't feel the same as before. It felt better. Because now there were 3 stockings hanging over the fireplace instead of 2. 3 place settings at the dinner table instead of 2. 3 voices filling the rooms with life and laughter. Emma was officially enrolled in school. Margaret had used her considerable resources to create a perfect background story. Emma had been living with distant relatives but had recently come home. She had a birth certificate, a social security number, school records, everything she needed to exist in the normal world. The collectors had been exposed. Mr. Crane and 6 others were in custody, facing multiple charges. More collectors were being investigated. Marcus and his team, along with Dr. Chen, were working with law enforcement to track down and stop the entire organization. And Emma was healthy. The resonance bond had stabilized her completely. Dr. Chen checked her every day, and every day the results were the same. Emma's heart was strong and steady. She was truly alive. "Mom," Emma said, curled up on the couch next to Margaret, "can I ask you something?" "Anything," Margaret said. "What would you have chosen?" Back at the warehouse, when Mr. Crane gave you the ultimatum, if he had actually made you choose between me and Thomas, what would you have said? Margaret was quiet for a moment. She looked at both her children, Emma with her hopeful, uncertain eyes, and Thomas, who had stopped reading his Braille book to listen. "I would have chosen both of you," Margaret said firmly. "I would have found a way to save both of you, or I would have died trying, because you're both my children. You're both precious. You're both worth everything to me. I couldn't choose between you any more than I could choose to stop breathing." "But Dad chose," Emma said quietly. 13 years ago, he chose Thomas over me." "No," Margaret said. "He didn't choose Thomas over you. He chose life over death. He was told both babies would die if he didn't make a decision. So he made the only choice he could, save one rather than lose both. And then he spent the rest of his life wishing he could have saved both. That wish, that desperate love, is what brought you back to us." "So he did love me," Emma said, "even though he never met me." "He loved you desperately," Margaret confirmed. "And so do I. And so does Thomas. You are loved, Emma. Completely and unconditionally loved." Emma leaned her head on Margaret's shoulder. "I love you too, Mom. Both of you." Thomas climbed up onto the couch and squeezed between them. Group hug. They held each other. The 3 of them together. Complete at last. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful, but not as beautiful as this moment. This perfect moment of family and love and hope. Margaret closed her eyes and sent a silent thank you to Robert. "Thank you for loving us so much. Thank you for the gift of our daughter. Thank you for never giving up, even in death." She could almost feel him there with them, smiling, at peace at last. Margaret stood in the wings of the school auditorium, watching Emma on stage. Her daughter was singing, not in a park for spare change, but in the school's annual talent show. Her voice was even more beautiful than it had been that first day, because now it was filled with joy instead of sadness. Thomas sat in the front row, beaming with pride. He'd memorized every word of Emma's song, and Margaret could see him mouthing along. Dr. Chen sat beside Margaret. "How's she doing?" the scientist asked. "Perfect," Margaret said. Her last checkup showed everything normal. Heart strong, health excellent. She's even growing. She gained 3 pounds this month. "The resonance bond is holding," Dr. Chen said with satisfaction. "She's truly stabilized. And the best part? We've used this same technique on 6 other Wishborn in the past 6 months. All of them are thriving. You saved more than just Emma, Margaret. You saved an entire community." Margaret watched her daughter sing, watched her son listen with his whole heart, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. She'd started this journey as a grieving widow with 1 broken son. Now she was a mother of 2 thriving children. She'd fought impossible odds, faced dangerous enemies, risked everything. And she'd won. Not just for her family, but for every family like hers. Every parent who'd lost a child. Every child who'd lost a parent. Every impossible soul who'd fought their way back from death because love was stronger than the laws of reality. Emma finished her song. The auditorium erupted in applause. She took a bow, her face glowing with happiness, and Margaret thought, This is what it's all for. These moments of joy and love and life, these precious seconds that make up a family." Emma came off stage and ran to Margaret, throwing her arms around her mother's neck. "Did you hear me? Did I do okay?" "You were perfect," Margaret said, holding her daughter tight. "Absolutely perfect." Thomas found his way over, and they had another group hug, right there in the crowded auditorium with people bustling around them. "I love you both so much," Margaret said. "We love you too, Mom," Emma and Thomas said together. And in that moment, Margaret realized that the truth that had left everyone speechless wasn't about Wishborn, or reality glitches, or impossible resurrections. The truth was much simpler and much more powerful. Love never dies. Even when everything else falls apart, even when reality itself says something is impossible, love finds a way. Love creates miracles. Love brings the dead back to life. Love makes families whole. And that truth would echo through their lives forever. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Rich Heart Stories for more interesting stories. Comment where you are watching from below.